Hello and welcome back, and today I want to talk to you guys about how to improve H.255 10-bit HDR media playback on your Plex server NAS that is a DS920. And I know what an intro that was, but let me break it down to something a little bit more chewable. Let me show you guys how to get media to play back a lot better on your DS920 Plus, and that includes transcoding on your Synology DS920. Now, a few disclaimers straight off the bat. Today, we're going to be doing some back-end modifications to your Synology NAS, and this is going to be very light stuff. It's not really going to be damaging. We're not going to do anything with SSL. This is all going to be conducted within DSM using very, very easy tools, and can be done in about 2 minutes. Given the length of this video, I'm sure you're going to be surprised by that. Also, bear in mind that things we're doing today are going to be mucking around with Plex Media Server itself. We're going to be telling Plex to use a different driver to the one that it's currently supposed to be using. It's been directed to use the IHD driver, and we want it to switch to the i965 video driver. You don't need to know what that means, but ultimately it's going to allow Plex to take advantage of the benefits that this CPU brings. So do bear that in mind, but always make sure you've got another stage of backup to your storage, because you are still doing something that's a little bit technical in the background, so you never know what the long-term effects might be. So make sure you've got another tier of backup strategy beyond that of your NAS. You should always have at least 2 backups in place at all times. Now, also bear in mind, if you update Plex Media Server in the future, there's a very good chance that it will undo the things you're going to do today. The reason being that you are editing the Plex Media Server app, but by doing so, there's a good chance that when there's an update, it will just revert everything back to normal. So bear in mind that until a more long-term solution presents itself, this is something you may have to repeat from time to time. Also, I'm using an 8 gig model of the DS920 Plus, so bear in mind that the results you're going to see, like down here, the green bar is Plex, the purple bar is the NAS system itself. Bear in mind that the results you're going to see are based on an 8 GB memory NAS, and the default model of this device arrives at 4 gig. And also remember that regardless of the improvements, because trust me, it will noticeably improve performance and playback of media of Plex on this NAS, this is still a Celeron based NAS, and none of the things you're going to do today will make this NAS as good as an i3, i5 or i7 Intel Core based NAS. So if that's the sort of stuff you should be considering, some proper 4K, real high-end HDR stuff, this is probably not the NAS for you anyway. But let's go through it. Now, you may have noticed the sound quality is a bit bouncy. The reason being that I've had to do a 2-mic 3-screen setup here, so I can show you guys the before and after effects of what we're doing here on a screen, as well as a separate screen that shows you the Synology NAS and the steps, as well as the performance of Plex during the playback. I'm also quite close to a switch where I've got everything sorted out, so there's a little bit of background hiss there that I've tried to remove, but I am really struggling due to these noises rising and decreasing over time. So let's go straight forward into this. Now, what you're going to need for today's video is a few things. First, you're going to need to download the text editor application from Synology in their package center. It's completely free. You don't even have to open it. Just install it and have it running in the background. Make sure you leave the package center open, because you will need to go into the Plex Media Server app here later on. Also, you're going to need FileStation, which is already going to be pre-installed by default. And remember to have Plex Media Server and your media already set up on the device. The reason being is you have to make sure Plex is installed before you can edit it. So with that done in the background, before we get on to the next steps, what we need to do now is head over to our Plex Media Server, and I'm going to show you an example of playback difficulties on this NAS. Now, on here are all of the test files that we used for our vanilla 920 Plex test last month. Now, if we list them here by name, you can see they're all listed by the number of megabits per second, the picture quality, HD or 4K, and the file compression, H.264, 265, and H.265 10-bit or HDR. Now, H.264 seemingly plays back fine. If we select an H.264 file there, it plays straight away. And again, this is a 1080p file. Plays back, no transcoding required, playing back native, absolutely fine. However, once we try to play H.265, which is technically the better playback file, it's the more modern compressive codec that allows files to be smaller, if we try to play back H.265, we're first presented with a buffer screen, then we see that it's converting this at the bottom here, and it barely plays and times out. If we go for the HDR or 10-bit 265, sorry, bit of a sore throat there. We play it forward and still not playing, and it is going to try to transcode. It struggles and it just kicks us out. Now, if we carry on with the H.264, so that's the older codec, and we go a little higher, we can go up to 30 megabits per second H.264. So that is technically a bigger file, and it plays. So it's the older codec, so the older, heavier, less compressed codec seemingly plays fine, yet the new codec H.265 with the better compression technique is the one that is struggling. Let's try just another one. Let's go for 10-bit. We'll come down from 30-bit H.264 down to 10-bit H.265, and we play that one, and again it will struggle. Now, while we're doing all of this, bear in mind on the screen there you can see the bandwidth spikes that show that the data is being accessed, and you'll see that that H.264 30 megabit one that we went for there played back fine, but the one on screen is struggling massively. Same goes for the CPU and the memory. You can see that it's not like it's taxing the system, you know, to ramp everything up to 100% utilization of CPU or memory. It's just struggling to play back that media. So now we've got that done, let me show you guys exactly how to get around this. Head into your Synology NAS, and the first thing you need to do is go into the package center, find Plex Media Server that we've already installed, find the arrow next to open and click stop. Now this step isn't necessary completely. You can get away with not doing this, but personally I would switch Plex off if you're going to muck around with the back end stuff anyway. And this allows you can still edit everything we're going to do even if you had Plex running, but I can't guarantee the stability of what you're doing. Now you've disabled Plex Media Server, minimize it up there, you need to go into File Station. In File Station, after you installed Plex, there should be a folder right here called Plex. Go into that folder, then go into Library, then into Application Support, then into Plex Media Server, and then into Preferences. If you double click Preferences, it will open up in the text editor. Now this is effectively the setup that Plex has between the system and you that basically tells the NAS what to do. You can see my email address there, the bin one we used before, and if we scroll along all the way to the end, the thing we're interested in is right here at the end, these two characters. Now what you need to do is enter a space, so now you've got space / arrow key. Then, and I've already opened it up in a Word doc, you need to insert this and overwrite that same character there. Now this should be in the description below. If not, there should be a link to NAS Compares where I'm going through all of the new modern NAS systems and showing how to repair Plex. And there should be a link to this line of code that you can just copy and paste straight into here. VAPI driver equals quote I965 quote space important / arrow. Take that text, copy it, and then in the text editor overwrite the / arrow and paste in that new command. So it should be space VAPI driver equals open quotation I965 quotation space / arrow. Now after you've done that, go into File and click Save. And now you've directed Plex to use the default I965 driver. Now you can close File Station now, reopen the package center and click Run on Plex Media Server. What this will do now is boot Plex Media Server. Now this can take a few minutes depending on the NAS that you've got. You'll know when it's working because on the right hand side of the screen here, Plex Media Server will reactivate. And what we're going to do is give it an extra minute, just allow Plex Media Server on the DS920 to reconnect. And it's going to do that in the background, and then it should reopen. You can see connecting there has now starting to be established, and this will open up the dashboard of our DS920 Plus. You can see there how long it's been sort of running down. It ran down and now it's reopening. We've got the bandwidth, everything's reverting to normal. And on the laptop, let's go ahead and refresh Plex Media Server so we can test out these media files. Now, if you followed everything I've done so far, then from this point, you're now using the default transcoding embedded graphics driver of this CPU. So last time, we struggled with the H.256 or HEVC version of that test file. So let's go ahead and play it. Let's open this up at the bottom. It's converting it, it's transcoded the file, and now it's running smooth as anything. You can see the CPU and the memory and the bandwidth there indicating that this file is indeed playing. As you see there, it's still not playing the original file, but it's transcoding that file stupendously well there in the background. As you can see, it has converted the file for us. So if we come out of that one, we can now look at the H.265 10-bit or HDR file. Click play. And once again, in the background, it's going to commit a conversion, and you can see the transcoding has now taken place. So now what we've done so far has allowed us to play back these files. We'll let it play all the way to the end just to show that it works. And what we're going to do now to end the video, I'm going to slowly make my way through all of the bigger resolutions just to show you guys the extent to which this works. Because bear in mind, again, we are still talking about a Celeron based NAS, and Plex Media Server is a hungry beast. So we're just going to look at H.265s and H.265 10-bit. So now we're going to go for H.265 10-bit. Play back that file, allow it to transcode. We're seeing the bandwidth spike, and there we go. We're now able to play that new file format. Going to go ahead there, and we can see buffering has well overtaken that of playback. So let's switch to a new one. Now we're going to go to 30 megabits per second H.265. It's probably going to start to struggle a little bit here. We've seen that bandwidth spike, which is a good sign. When you see these spikes here, you'll see the spikes are going to get bigger with each iteration as each file format we're playing gets increasingly bigger. But as you see, it's still playing them, and it is still transcoding them there in the background, but transcoding here is only just outpacing that of standard playback. So let's carry on further. Let's try 100. So this is 100 megabits 1080p H.265. And it should play this, but I reckon this will be the top end. This is not a NAS that's been built for 4K Plex Media Server. And I think this is going to be the most telling factor here. And I think this is where we kind of hit the glass ceiling on this NAS. We're seeing the spikes, but we're seeing those spikes decreasing. The system is having difficulty there. And I think that's where the limit is with regards to this 1080p file. But nevertheless, this is still an enormous change in performance to what we saw before. And it has gutterballed out there. Now, we do have some quite large file types down here of H.264. So if you like, we can have a look at how it plays standard H.264 at 4K now with this new addition of the system utilizing the primary driver. This is a 4K file being played in Plex, but of course this is H.264, and even if it plays, we can see here at the bottom, I don't think playback is going to outdo this buffering here at the bottom. It's trying to convert, or it's trying to play it back. Let's select manual conversion, automatic conversion. Let's see what it does. I do think we may have hit a wall there on that file there. But again, that's kind of the limit of the CPU you're going to find from a Celeron Plex Media Server. And this is when you have to start talking about those i3, i5s, and i7s. It's managed to play it, but I think we'd be lying if we said that that was a perfect rendition of playback. At least the conversion has happened there in the background. So, do you know what? Let's end this on the Johnny Big Bananas. Let's go right there, top end, absolutely no chance. H.265 10-bit 4K 400 frame bit rate, just insane. It's almost certainly not going to play it. And while it does that lack of playing, I'd like to thank you for watching. Click like if you've enjoyed this video. I am going to try to do more of these on other NAS systems. I'm going to cover some of the Acer stores and QNAPs as well. I know they have their own method of editing some of the files for Plex in the background. And once again, I cannot stress enough, one, make sure you've got at least 2 tiers of backup strategy if you're going to do this. And 2, bear in mind that what you're doing may be undone in another Plex media server update in the future. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.